Today, we're diving into the mind of Edmund Kemper. Now, his name is tied to some of the most horrific crimes you can imagine. But here's the thing that makes his case so deeply unsettling. The man had a genius-level IQ. So how on earth does a mind that brilliant turn to such extreme violence? That's really the question we're trying to figure out here. I just wanted to see what it felt like. That's what a 14-year-old Edmund Kemper said right after he murdered his own grandparents. Just let that sink in for a second. It wasn't about rage, it wasn't about revenge. It was just his cold, clinical curiosity. This one sentence right here, it tells you almost everything you need to know about the chilling puzzle of his mind.
So yeah, what creates a mind that can do this? Is a person born this way, or does something happen to make them this way? We're going to walk through his entire story, from his really disturbing childhood all the way to his final confession, to try and get a handle on the forces that created the man they called the co-ed killer.
To even begin to understand the monster, you really have to start with the child. Kemper's story didn't just pop up out of nowhere with his first murder. No, it started way earlier, with the kind of psychological damage that was inflicted on him inside his own home. So let's go back to the beginning. Can you just imagine being a little kid and your own mother forces you to sleep in a dark, locked basement every single night? And a reason for it? She told people she was afraid he might hurt his sisters. I mean, this wasn't just a punishment. It was a message. It was complete rejection and isolation, coming from the one person in the world who's supposed to protect you. And the abuse wasn't just being locked away. It was this constant, relentless, psychological warfare. His mother, Clarnell, she just tore him down every chance she got. She'd mock him for his height. He was huge, even as a kid. And she made fun of him for being socially awkward. Every single insult, every single put down, it was like she was planting a little seed of resentment that was just going to grow and fester for years.
And you know the warning signs? They were all there, clear as day. The kind of violence he'd later use on people, well, he practiced it first. He decapitated his sister's dolls, he killed small animals. And this is so important. These weren't just weird kid things. They were rehearsals. He was literally practicing building a pattern of violence long before he ever killed a person.
So all that childhood anger, all those violent rehearsals, it was all building up to a breaking point. And when he was just 14 years old, it happened. Kemper committed his first murders, and that act set him on a path that would be defined by two things from then on: brutal violence and incredible deception.
So in 1964, at only 14, he shoots and kills both of his grandparents. He gets diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and they send him to Atascadero State Hospital. But here's the part that is just unbelievable. Look at that timeline. Just 7 years later, he's 21 years old, and he walks out a free man. The system was totally convinced he was cured.
So how did he pull that off? How did he fool them all? Well, this number is the key: 145. That was Edmund Kemper's IQ. He was, by all measures, a genius. And he learned how to weaponize that intelligence, not for good, but for pure deception.
I mean, just look at this. On the outside, he was the model patient. But on the inside, his brilliant mind was working overtime. He was basically reverse engineering their tests. He studied all the psychological evaluations, figured out exactly what they wanted to hear, and then he gave them the perfect performance of a rehabilitated young man. He completely played the very experts who were supposed to see right through him.
So he's released. And where do they send him? Unbelievably, right back to live with this mother, the very source of all that rage. Well, that rage had to go somewhere, and it found a terrifying new outlet. This next chapter, from 1972 to 1973, is when he earns that infamous nickname, the co-ed killer. This right here shows you the two completely different faces of Edmund Kemper. On the left, you've got his public image, this articulate, charming, 6'9", gentle giant. But on the right, that's the horrifying reality. A predator who used that harmless act to lure young women, hitchhikers mostly, into his car where he would commit just unspeakable acts of violence. The sheer nerve of this guy is just staggering. Kemper would actually hang out at this local bar called the Jury Room. And you know who else hung out there? Off-duty cops. He would literally buy them drinks, listen to them talk, and get inside details on the investigation into the very murders he was committing. He was hiding in plain sight. And then, in April of 1973, it all just imploded. He finally acted on the one fantasy he'd had for years. He murdered his mother, Clarnell, as she slept. Then he killed her best friend. And after that, he just got in his car, drove for days all the way to Colorado, found a payphone, and called the police. And with this terrifying, calm clarity, he confessed to everything.
Now, you'd think the story would end right there. Kemper gets locked away for life, case closed. But in this really bizarre and unsettling twist, his story was actually far from over. His capture was really the beginning of a whole new legacy, one that would change the course of law enforcement forever.
So, inside prison, Kemper agrees to be interviewed by these agents from the FBI's brand new behavioral science unit. We're talking about pioneers like Robert Ressler and John Douglas. And what they discovered was just mind-blowing. Because Kemper was so smart and so articulate, he could explain his own twisted logic in a horrifyingly clear detail. His interviews became this absolute goldmine of information, giving them a look inside the mind of a serial killer that they had never had before.
And this is the ultimate chilling irony of the whole story. The co-ed killer, one of the most monstrous people imaginable, actually became a key tool for catching other monsters. The things the FBI learned from talking to him helped build the very foundation of criminal profiling techniques that are still used to this day.
Which brings us all the way back to that central question. There are no easy answers with Edmund Kemper. You can see so clearly the impact of his horrific upbringing, the making of a monster. But then you also see this cold, intelligent, detached way about him that almost feels like it was just there from the beginning. So what do you think? After hearing all this, where do you land on the question of what creates a mind like his?